Good evening, everyone. Um, let's just wait for 7 minutes more for others to join, and then we can start with the session. Also, please, can any one of you let me know that my voice is clear and you can see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you and see your screen as well.
Okay, great. Let's just wait for some time and then we can start with the session. Okay, so we can start. People will keep joining. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I am Prashasti Pandey, a PhD and PMRF Fellow from Department of Botany, Banaras Hindu University, and I'll be taking the live sessions for this course, which is Introduction to Biostatistics, whose instructor is Professor Shamik Sen from IIT Bombay. And let me first start by telling you that what we'll be doing in these sessions. And so I hope all of you have already started with the session with the other courses and the classes and the videos that are being uploaded. And you are getting an assignment every week, which you have to solve by the end of the week. And then by the end of this course, you'll be having an examination. So these live sessions are to help you solve your assignment problems. Although in these sessions, we won't be answering the questions of your assignments and we won't be solving them, but we will be solving similar questions that were um, asked during the previous year's assignment or the previous year's course, and we'll be solving them so that it can help you solve your current assignments. Other than that, I'll be putting on a question on the screen. I will give you guys some time to answer the question. If you're able to answer, please turn on your mics and you can say the answer loud. And if you don't know the answer, we'll go into the concept of that particular question. I'll also tell you the answer to it. And that's how we'll proceed with this session. If there is anything else that you want me to cover during this session, please let me know towards the end so we can incorporate that in next sessions. Okay? So I hope this is clear. And so, yes, let's start with it. Okay, so this is your first question. Which of the following statements gives a correct description of inferential statistics? And your options are on the screen. I'll give you two minutes. If anyone knows the answer, please say it. Otherwise, we'll go ahead with the with understanding the concept of this question. You all are able to see my screen, right? Let this be a more interactive session. You guys can answer if you know the answer to this question. Okay, so we
Option A is the correct one.
option A. Okay. So yes, you're right. Option A is the correct answer. And let's just proceed with understanding the concept for this one. So the question was, uh, which which of the correct options describe inferential statistics? So let's first try to understand what are the two major kinds of statistics. One is called as descriptive statistics, and the other one is inferential statistics. Now, what are these two statistics? So let's talk about the descriptive biostatistics. Let's take an example that you have some kind of data. Suppose you have a data which tells about the age of a class. Okay, there are 30 students in a class, and you have a data which tells about the ages of all the 30 students. Now, if you tell something about exactly about that data without making any kind of interpretations or without extrapolating the data, that is called as a descriptive biostatistics. So the definition will be it that descriptive biostatistics is to summarize or to organize or to present that data in a meaningful way. So either you can summarize this entire data by telling that the average age of this class is XYZ, or you can tabulate the data in the form of, say, that this is the age of all the girls and this is the age of all the guys. This is called as the organization, and you can present that data in a form of various graphs or any kind of representative way. Okay, so when you do summarize, organization, and presentation of a data, this kind of biostatistics will be descriptive way, and you are always dealing with the raw data. You are not making assumptions about that data. Okay, so the ways or the tools that you use in descriptive biostatistics could be calculating the mean of the data or the median or the mode or things like standard deviation, variations, and things like this will be ways to summarize the data. And the presentation ways can be different forms of graphs, histograms, and these kind of things, or it could be tables of frequency distributions. Now, I told you the example of a class. Here, there's an example of a plant where it is calculating the average chlorophyll content in, say, different 100 mung bean plants under control and stress conditions. So if you're just talking about this data, that will be descriptive biostatistics. Now, on the other hand, what is inferential biostatistics? So let's take the example of a class only. So now, if I am saying that if we are talking about the age, and if we say that, suppose A is the average age of girls and B is the average age of boys. And now I want to make an assumption whether the girls of age is lower than the age of guys. That is a kind of hypothesis. Okay, so creating an hypothesis, testing that hypothesis, or making conclusions or predictions about any kind of data comes under inferential biostatistics. Okay, now this inferential biostatistics can have various subtypes and different purposes and techniques, which so if you are dealing with a parametric statistics, that is, you are having numbers which can be differentiated. So those kind of data will be included in the parametric statistics. And so basically, parametric statistics and non-parametric statistics is the basis is on the fact that the data is distributed normally or whether there is no assumption on the distribution of the data. This decides whether your data is parametric or whether your data is a non-parametric. And based on these, there are different tests which you can perform based on your data, whether it is a t-test or an ANOVA, or for non-parametric tests like Mann-Whitney test or Kruskal-Wallis test or chi-square test. So these tests will basically give you an assumption about that data, whether that data is significantly different or it has no significance difference, or any kind of hypothesis that you are making. So whether your hypothesis is a yes or a no. Okay, whether you're testing the null hypothesis or there is an alternative hypothesis, which of the hypothesis is true. So this is called making an assumption or prediction. Now, when and why do we make these kind of predictions? So if you're talking about a class, okay, so that class is in this data set will be a sample from a whole, say, college. So if I want to talk about the average age of class in a college, it is impossible to count the ages of all the students in a college, which might contain, say, 2,000, 3,000, or 5,000 students. So the easier way, or the practical way of doing it is to select random 10 classes and calculate the average age of girls and boys those 10 classes, and then do a prediction of what could be the average age of the entire university. So here the age of university will be counted as a population, and the 10 classes that you are selecting is an example of a sample. Right. So in inferential biostatistics, you can extrapolate the data from the sample to talk about the population. Okay, so this is the basic difference between descriptive biostatistics and inferential biostatistics. Now let's go back to our question, which is correct description of inferential statistics. So your option was it is a way to extrapolate the results of a sample to the population it is derived from. It describes the properties of sample or population. So this cannot be true because it cannot describe the property of sample and a population. That is not done in inferential biostatistics. The third is it summarizes important statistical characteristics of set of measurements. So that is also not true because you cannot talk about the statistical characteristics of measurements in case of inferential statistics. And the fourth one is it measures the central tendency to understand characteristics of a population. So no, central tendencies are the examples of your central tendencies are mean, median, and mode. And and talking about mean, median, and mode is talking about the descriptive statistics. So that is also wrong. So whoever answered the question as A, so that is the correct option. It is a way to extrapolate the results of a sample to the population it is derived from. Okay, so I hope this question was clear. And let's move on to the next question. Which type of graph correctly represents trend over time? Your options are pie chart, histogram, scatter plot, and line plot. If anyone knows the answer, please go ahead.
Line plot is the correct answer, right?
Plot.
Okay, yeah, correct. So the answer is line plots. So this was a very simple question, I guess. So this is the most commonly frequently used kind of graphs in biostatistics. So the basic one to know is the bar graph, which can compare the categories. So as I was giving in a previous example of the ages, so when you compare the average age of girls and boys in a class, you can easily represent that data with a bar graph. And then next comes a histogram. So histogram basically shows a frequency of a continuous data. So now what is a continuous data? Any data which where you are using intervals or where you are using a range and that range comes one after the other. So suppose you say that the ages so if you count about the frequencies, for example, if you're talking about the age and you count that number of students which are in between the age 20 to 22, 22 to 24, 24 to 26. So now this is a continuous data. Okay, so the age it will always come in one of the following classes. So these kind of data are represented by histogram. Then there is pie chart, which shows different proportions of a whole. So for representing any kind of data in a pie chart, you need to know the whole of it. Okay. And then out of the whole, you can talk about the proportion. So suppose this is the complete data we have, this is the complete thing, and this much portion is represented to this much is represented to this much. So if this kind of data representation is there, then we use pie charts. Then there is line graph, which shows trends over time because you can, so there are dots in the line charts, and it is, you can mark the data which can be time dependent, which can either increase or decrease. So there are various kinds of, observations that you can show by line graph, but they are usually over time or time dependent graphs. So that's where your line graphs are mostly used. Then there is box plot and scatter plot. Um, so box plots are basically used so they can show multiple things within one single. So bar graph can only show a mean with some kind of error or standard like standard deviation or standard error. But in case of box plots, you can show quartile data, you can show the median of your data, you can show the errors on that as well. So box plot combines a lot of data in one single representation. And similarly, scatter plot. So your scatter plot can show various kind of things. It's usually used to show the correlations between the data. If you are in science field and if you're having a data like lot of metabolite contents in a plant or a data which has a lot of values where you want to see if they are related to each other or if they are forming a whole bunch which can be related and things like this. To study correlation, that's where scatter plots can be in use. So based on this, the correct answer for your question is a line plot. Very good, whoever answered this. And with that, we'll move on to our next question. Okay. So, which of the following is an appropriate function of using scatter plots to represent a data? So, your options are on the screen. If anyone knows the answer, please go ahead.
C is the right answer.
Okay.
Relationship between two variables.
Yes, great. So, we'll just understand scatter plot in a little. So, this the image in your on your screen is isn't a type of scatter plot. So now, what scatter plot is really? Your scatter plot can show a relationship or a correlation between two numerical values. So, in case of this particular graph, you can see that. I'm sorry. So you can see that the axes are labeled as X and Y. So those axes are the quantitative variables which can have a kind of relationship which a scatter plot is primarily used to show. So in this case, there are various functions, as I was telling earlier, where you can use a scatter plot. So you can use it for visualizing correlations, like you can determine whether it has a positive correlation or it has a negative correlation, or also if it has a no correlation. So there are values where you can calculate an R square value to determine how strong your correlation is. And then there is where you can identify a trend. So in this case, it is a linear pattern. Okay. So you can say that when your X will increase, your Y will also increase. These kind of data can be very well represented by a scatter plot. Now, the third point is detecting an outlier. So suppose if there was some data which was showing which was actually not included in this particular line. Suppose I'll just show and show. So suppose there is a data which is here or here. Okay. So it is not coming in this straight line, right? So these two data will now be called as outlier data. So here in this case it is a linear pattern, but there are chances that your dots will go like this. In this case, the line will be like this. It might not be a linear pattern, but still, these 2 points are not lying on the line and they will be counted as an outlier data. So you can also identify these outliers once you draw a scatter plot. And the fourth one is to access the strength and direction of the relationship. So it is very much related to the correlation, whether if your X is, have a positive correlation with Y, then your X will increase along with your Y, or if it has a negative correlation, your one value will increase and the other one will decrease. Okay, so this is the main use of scatter plot. And the right answer to our question is yes, to represent the relationship between two variables, X and Y. So I hope this was clear, and we'll move to next question. I think this is a little bit of solving question. So if you guys have a pen and paper, please go ahead and solve it. The question is the weight in kgs of infants born at a hospital is recorded below. You have some values. Now organize the data and determine the frequency of infants born within the range of 2.5 to 3.5 kg. Let's just take 3, 4, 5 minutes, however much you want. Please solve this question and just let me know the answer if any one of you solves it.
Answer is 13.
13.
Yeah, 13B.
Okay. Let's just wait for like a minute or two for others to solve, and then we can go ahead with solving the answer.
And the answer is 13.
Okay. So we'll just go ahead with the solution of this. All right. Okay. So in solving these kind of questions, the first thing that you need to, so because the question that was asked was to obtain the frequencies of an inference. Okay. So when you're solving these kind of questions, the first thing that you need to do is to sort your data in any particular order. It can be either ascending order or in descending order. So in this case, the order is in ascending. Okay. So the data is being sorted from what to your lowest value to the highest value. Now the second step you have to do is to select a range. So because it is asking about calculating the frequencies in a range, so how do you calculate a range? So the formula, the way to you select the values in the range, and then whatever in this case, your range is 2.5 to 3.5, and with that you can just calculate whatever the values are fall that is falling in between 2.5 to 3.5, and then just sum it. Okay, so weight of the babies in this data set is 2.6, 2.8, 3, 3.2, and 3.4. Okay, so in the 2.6 category, there are four infants, 2.8, there are three, in three, there are three, and two and one is similarly. So when you add all these things, you get a value which is 13. Okay, so in this case, this was a very easy question, and I hope it was very clear how to solve this. So in this question, your option B is the correct answer. Okay. I hope this was clear. It was very simple question. And if anyone has doubt, please you can raise your hand or you can ask the question. Otherwise, we'll just move on to the next question. Okay. So this is your next question. Given below are the heart rates in beats per minute of 12 patients. Determine the range of the data and construct a frequency distribution table with five classes. What is the percentage of patients that have a heart rate over 75 beats per minute?
The answer is 50%.
Okay. If anyone has solved it, please um, you can tell the answer. Otherwise, we'll go for the solution. We have one answer, 50%. Anyone else? Okay. Uh, I hope that either you have solved the answer and you know the answer, you just don't want to speak, or you already know how to do this. So I'll just proceed with the answer, the solution for this question. Okay. So to solve these kind of questions, because it is talking about a range, you need to identify the range. And for calculating the range, you need to know a minimum value and a maximum value, which you will get from the data. So in this case, if you organize this again, so the first step is to organize this data. And once you organize the data, you can identify the lowest value is 65 and the highest value is 90. Okay, so from this you can calculate the range, which will be the highest minus the lowest value, and it is 25 beats per minute, and that will be the range. Now, the next step is to create a frequency distribution with five classes because that is already mentioned in the question. So now, how you can calculate the width of this is if you divide the range by number of classes. Okay. So for example, in this case, the range that we have come up with is 25, and you have to divide it in 5. So the answer will be 5. So the value of your intervals of each class will be 5. And now, since your lowest value is 65, you can start by creating the class intervals from 65 by adding 5 in each one of it. So 65 plus 5 will be 69, then 70 to 74. So your classes will go on like this till the end of it, right? Now you can put your frequency values by taking your raw data in each one of the class intervals. And then, as your question was asked, was what percentage of patients with heart rate more than 75 beats per minute? You can calculate by knowing the value from here. So the patients which fall into the category of 75 to 79, 80 to 84, 85 to 89, and 90 to 94. All these patients will have the heart rate of more than 75 beats per minute. And when you sum this up, you get a value of 6 patients. Okay. So now the question was asking about the percentage of the patients. So to calculate the percentage of the patients, your 6 patients have the beats of more than 675 out of the total patients, which will be the sum of all these frequencies, which is 12. And then that you can multiply with 100. And that value is 50%, right? So the correct answer for this question is 50%. 50% patients will have the heart rate over 75 beats per minute. Okay. So yeah, great. Whoever answered this question. Yeah. So let's go ahead with next question. Again, this is a solving question. Given below is the radical length in centimeter of seedlings measured for seed germination study. What is the average radical length? And the data is given below. So yeah, go ahead and you can solve this. Let me know the answer if anyone of you gets it.
1.8 is the answer.
Okay, so we have an answer 1.8. If anyone else solves it, and come on, you can answer. I mean, it's the live session is for that only. Or at least you can try to solve. It might be wrong, but okay. So let's move forward to solve this question. Okay. So the question was quite easy. It was it was, so when the term average is mentioned, you just have to calculate the arithmetic mean. And the formula for arithmetic mean is very simple. It's just you calculate the sum of everything upon the total number. Okay, so that will give you the arithmetic mean. So, similarly, when you add all these values, so first step was to add all the values. When you add, the sum will be 52.5 centimeter. And you count the total number of the observations, which was 29 in this case, and you simply divide um, Yeah, so you simply divide 52.5 by 29, and then your answer is approximately 1.81 centimeter. So in this case, yes, your option C is correct, 1.8. Can I know your name, who just answered this question?
Krishnendu.
Okay, Krishnendu. Yeah, great. So yeah, the answer to this question is 1.8 centimeter. Okay, so we'll just go ahead to next question. Which of the following statements on the measures of central tendency is correct? Your options are mean is not affected by outliers, mode can be used reliably for small data sets, median is less sensitive to outliers, and mean median mode can lie outside the minimum and maximum values in a data set. Anyone?
Option C.
Option C. Okay, we have that answer. Option C.
Yes, median is less sensitive.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to answer?
I think option C as well.
Okay, great. So we have two for option C. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the solution to this question. Um, we can start by understanding these three basic concepts of statistics, which is mean, median, and mode. And so mean is basically the other name is arithmetic mean, as we saw it in the previous question. It is the average of all the data points, and it is calculated by summing up all the values and dividing it by the total number of values. Then there is median, which is the middle value of an ordered data set. So the reason it is said ordered because to calculate a median, you need to organize your data set in a but in a specific order. It can be either ascending or descending, but it needs to have an order to get a median value. Okay, and then you divide the data into two equal halves. So if your data is odd, you will get a middle value, which will be the exact middle of that data point, and it will be the median. But in case if your data values is even, if number of the data sets are even, in that case, you will take the two middle values and then take an average of that value, and that will be the median of that data set. Similarly, mode. So mode is basically the value that occurs most frequently in a data set. And interestingly, you can have no mode of a data, or you can have a single mode, or you can have two modes, or you can have multiple modes in a data, because that simply depends on the frequency of occurrence of some value in a data set. So mode can basically vary because of that. So these are the three basic calculations that you need to know in the biostatistics, which is mean, median, and mode. And so now going back to the statements that were given, the first statement was that mean is not affected by outliers. No, that is totally wrong. Mean is highly sensitive value. So if you have a value, say if you have 10 values and eight of those values are very close to each other, but two values are very far in two opposite directions, your mean will change a lot. Okay, so because mean is dependent on the average, and average includes the sum of everything. So you cannot exclude the lowest value as well and the highest value as well. No matter what values lie in the middle, if your lowest and highest values vary a lot, your data is going to get skewed, and there will be skewness in that data, and which will be very significant. So yes, your mean is affected by the outlier. So this statement was wrong. The second statement was mode can be used reliably for small data sets. So no, your mode value basically represents the number of times it has been occurring. Okay, so if the data set is very small, there are high chances that the values are not repeated yet. In that case, you will either have no mode at all, or you can come up with a false mode. So mode cannot be reliably used for small data sets, and the result for it will be either misleading or it won't be well defined. So yes, the second statement was also wrong. the third statement was median is less sensitive to outliers. Yes, the median value is the middle value, and it will not get much influenced by the extremely high or the extremely low values because you are calculating a value from the positions and not from the values of it. Okay, so if the order is arranged is not changing it, then your median won't change much. So it is very less sensitive to outliers. So yes, the third statement was correct, and the fourth statement was mean, median, and mode can lie outside the minimum and maximum values. That cannot be possible because by definition, neither of these three can lie outside the range. You cannot calculate them if the values are outside the range. So fourth statement was totally wrong. So yes, the answer to this question was that median is less sensitive to outlier. Great. Two of you whoever answered this question. And moving on to our next question. So this is again a solving question. Please go ahead and solve this question. The research team is studying the role of light on motility of algae. Given below are the cell speed in micrometer per second obtained at the end of the experiment. Calculate the median speed. It's a very easy question. Please solve it.
Ma'am, 145.
Okay, so we have one answer, 145. Is there anyone else?
145.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead with this. So it was a very simple question. We already talked about what mean, median, mode is. Here on the screen, you have the formulas for calculating the mean. As I mentioned, that your mean is the sum of all the values and the number of values present on that. Your median can be the middle value if the values are in odd, and you have to calculate the median of the two values if your data set has even number of observations, where you take two, either n by 2 and n by 2 plus 1 value, and then divide it by 2. That's how you get median for even data sets. And for calculating the mode, the value that appears most frequently if your data is ungrouped, but if your data is grouped like a frequency distribution table, in that case, you use this particular formula to calculate your mode. Okay, so to our question, the data here is not grouped right now. Okay, so this is a not group data. So in that case, it is very easy to calculate it. You just have to, take out the frequencies of the values that are occurring in this data set, and you can simply get the mode out of it. You can sort the data in any kind of order. Here it is sorted in ascending order. Then, yeah, just give me a second. Somebody's still joining. Okay. So then you can count the number of values. So there are total 10 values in this data set. So 10 is an even number, right? So for calculating even number, you just have to take two positions. Basically your n value here is 10. When you divide it by 2, it is 5. So, and the other value should be n by 2 plus 1, right? So the other value should be 6. So how you calculate fifth and sixth here is by the positions. So this is your position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you take 140 and 150 value. And when you add it and then divide it by 2, that's how you get 145. Okay. So the correct answer to this question was 145. Great. Now let's go, I guess. Okay. Yeah, this was the last question. So yeah, this was your example questions. I am not really sure what kind of questions you are getting this year, but these were the questions from previous year's course. So if there is anything else that you want to discuss, or if there are any suggestions that you want me to take the kind of questions in the next session, please let me know. And if there's anything else that you want to ask, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can end the session. Also, I'm really hoping to make this interactive class. This is a very interesting topic, bioinformatics, biostatistics. I'm sorry. You can calculate, and it can be a very interesting session, but it can only happen if you people answer in this. So if you have any suggestions which can make it more interactive or anything more, I'm sure sir is teaching a very good lectures. I don't need, you don't want those kind of things from me. So if there's anything else, please let me know. Okay, so I guess there are no questions. Then in that case, I'll end the meeting and I just hope to see you next week, Friday, same time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we'll go ahead with the next week's assignment questions. Thank you, everyone. but these were the questions from previous year's course. So if there is anything else that you want to discuss, or if there are any suggestions that you want me to take the kind of questions in the next session, please let me know. And if there's anything else that you want to ask, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can end the session. Also, I'm really hoping to make this interactive class. This is a very interesting topic, bioinformatics, biostatistics. I'm sorry. You can calculate, and it can be a very interesting session, but it can only happen if you people answer in this. So if you have any suggestions which can make it more interactive or anything more, I'm sure sir is teaching a very good lectures. I don't need, you don't want those kind of things from me. So if there's anything else, please let me know. Okay, so I guess there are no questions. Then in that case, I'll end the meeting, and I just hope to see you next week, Friday, same time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we'll go ahead with the next week's assignment questions. Thank you, everyone.